This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by
next month's very special release of Harmon Studios' motion picture, Alien Invasion Tomato Monster Mexican Armada Brothers, who were just regular brothers running in a van from an asteroid and all sorts of things, the movie.
And the letter Q, the most agoraphobic letter. It can't stand to go outside unless its friend, you, comes along. Q for agoraphobic.
Flight is go. Myla, let's go. SPM, safety contact.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith. Welcome to episode 32 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories in pop culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and everywhere else you find stories that interest you and us because it's our podcast. This is the Anti-Heroes of Riverdale edition. With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and author of the upcoming Jet Jurgens and the Infinity Key. Get on the mailing list now while you can, Christopher Allen Smith.
And with me today is my co-host, professional writer and author of the forthcoming The Sonia Show book, title to be determined, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there.
Hello. In this week's episode, we're talking about anti-heroes. Are there too many anti-heroes on television? Yes. What started out as really exciting storytelling became a yawn-inducing standard, and now is the time to talk about it. We talk about what I have labeled the Toxic Heisenberg Syndrome, maybe the Toxic Lannister Syndrome, but we'll get to that, and share our favorite TV anti-heroes. And speaking of anti-heroes, in our second segment, we review the CW's radical reimagining of the wholesome Archie comics, Riverdale, and NBC's grim take, surprise, it's grim, it's gritty, take on The Wizard of Oz, Emerald City, with fantastic entertainment journalist Abbie Bernstein. We have got a lot to dork out about, so let's get this podcast started. That brings us to topic one, the Toxic Heisenberg Syndrome, or are anti-heroes wrecking the platinum age of television? To set the stage, almost 20 years ago, Tony Soprano snuck onto TV dramas, struck onto television dramas like a lightning bolt, shaking off nearly every expected trope and storytelling straitjacket that had been built on the foundation at the dawn of television. Tony's antics, anti-hero antics, as written by David Chase, in a large part began and made popular the modern era of television dramas. Basically, everything we have to love with television sprung from the well of David Chase and Tony Soprano.
Well, I have a thought about that, but maybe I'll hold off.
I understand. Heroes had flaws, stories were mature in themes and presentation, and the quality jumped to such a level that a lot of pop culture critics, myself included, now look to TV as the true storytelling art form of the modern age. But I gotta say, in the last couple of years, the cure seems like it's becoming worse than the disease. Its shows are becoming grim, bitter, dark, with characters at their core who are just dark as night. I wanted to talk about this because in the last few weeks, watching the bloody finale of Westworld, then trying to start up on Tom Hardy's Taboo and Jude Law's The Young Pope, I realized I might have hit my limit. We're just watching awful people do awful things doesn't really have the feeling of discovery and boundary pushing it did 10 years ago. Now it just seems like just a grim, bitter, hard trudge, and I'm kind of tired of it. So I propose a discussion that we're calling the Toxic Heisenberg Syndrome. And Sonia Mansfield, are TV's anti-heroes just eating up the drama as we know it, or am I just overreacting to not liking Taboo?
No, I think it's exactly what you said. I think that too much. It's just too much. It's too much dark, especially with everything that's going on in the world. It's really hard to come home and turn on the TV and watch Taboo.
Yes.
You know, it's like you've been listening to like all this stuff that's happening in the world, and then to come, you want to like kind of tune out and drop out, and you can't. Like,
right.
Because every show is got a lead that's just messed up and a horrible person, and certainly not someone you want to spend time with. It's really tough, you know. And I think that it's so funny. I was talking about this with my husband, and he was I wrote it down what we started talking about, which is basically he calls this the Frank Miller syndrome.
And
he said
that's a reference I get.
Yeah, and he, you know, because I was also talking about Riverdale, and we're going to talk about Riverdale in the second segment. He said that Frank Miller was kind of one of these people that like one of the first to like successfully bring like a dark take on a classic comic. Like, right. You know, he kind of put like Batman into like this like emo dark trend.
Yes.
You know, and it's like really cynical and jaded. And then pretty soon, like all the comics were doing that. And like I said, we're going to talk about Riverdale later. And it happened on TV too. You know, it's all like Sherlock, you know, is pretty, he's an anti-hero, but he always was. But like, it's just been going on for such a long time. I mean, you mentioned it like it did, you know, Tony Soprano, but I go all the way back to J.R. Ewing.
That's true, but there was a lot of heroes on that show fighting him. He seems to me to be more like a classic television villain.
Interesting.
But
okay.
I hear you.
I think people rooted for him though.
Okay.
Like you kind of hated yourself for loving him.
Okay.
You know, so that's why I thought of him when we originally broached this topic.
Right.
As someone who is, to me, like the epitome of the anti-hero.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, yeah, and that's the thing. It's because, you know, my anti-heroes that I really like, you know, there's essentially just two. Tony Soprano, who is just a very fascinating character. And it's interesting, you know, because that's the whole thing for that show at its heart is somebody with normal domestic problems that doesn't have to deal with them in a normal domestic way because he's in the mafia. So he's kind of unshackled. And, you know, the way that there was the one episode where they suspected one of the college or one of the soccer coaches was kind of messing around with the girls, and all of a sudden that guy had mafia problems.
Right.
I mean, it was just a fascinating show. And how do people deal with problems? How, you know, what could you do? What would you do if the shackles were taken off? And then Walter White, which is, you know, I think I would put up Walter White up with Shakespeare as one of the great all-time characters in any medium. But I think the problem is for me, when you're doing this, but you're not a Vince Gilligan, or you're not, you know, a David Chase, and you're, you know, the third writer on Sons of Anarchy or something, it's just gets really, or like, you know.
It just becomes so lazy.
It becomes lazy, and it just becomes so, like, such a trudge. Because I was looking at lists of, you know, kind of the big name dramas over the last 20 years. And, you know, in a way, I'm going to sound like some old school marm.
It's so funny. You made a list, and I made a list over on my notes, too. And
right.
There's some crossover here, but there's also not – there's some that isn't. So, like, we have quite a –
yeah,
so, we have quite a list here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through a couple. And Abbie, who's gonna be on our next segment, you know, when we talked to her about this segment, she had some ones that I kind of forgot about. You know, so there's Billions, which is a new drama on Showtime, where both the hero and the anti-hero are both kind of messed up, screwed up white guys. One of which is kind of a crass, amoral, businessman, and the other is kind of a Department of Justice guy who's just as screwed up as he is, kind of going after each other. It's like watching two scorpions fight. Then there's The Affair, which is about a husband and his mistress and the wife. And so we're watching his story through this. We're watching the story through the lens of the husband and the mistress, which is, I watched the first season of that and it was just like, oh my God. Then there's The Shield. That show got incredibly dark at the end. Vinyl.
Vic Mackey, by the way, is on my list.
Right. And he should. And that's the thing, is The Shield, it's good enough. But Vinyl was just a dark, boring, trudge. Then there's, Dexter, a show about a serial killer. The Americans, which I've just started to watch, which is about a husband and wife spy team, it's good. Game of Thrones, which is incredibly dark. House of Cards, Frank Underwood is one of the creepiest, most awful guys going around. Then there's, of course, Don Draper, kind of the defining anti-hero, other than Walter White, of this era. And there's Mr. Robot, Narcos, who, drug dealer. Sons of Anarchy, a criminal gang. Hannibal, which is a literal serial killer at the heart of that show that you're kind of rooting for and kind of fascinated by. Then you go over to
I have a couple dramas we could throw in there. Deadwood.
Yeah.
With Al Swearingen.
Right.
Did you say Boardwalk Empire?
No, I didn't. Thank you. See?
Boardwalk Empire. Damages.
Yeah.
House.
Yes.
That's a network one there. And I would say The Wire.
That's true. Yeah.
Not only with its lead, cop, Dominic West, but you could put Omar Little probably on that list.
Definitely. There's definitely several people in, because I was thinking about The Wire, but there are people trying to do good and trying to do bad. That one I think is I would put that in the Breaking Bad, Shield, Mad Men category, where when they were doing it, it was still original and interesting, and they were much more skilled and nuanced about it.
That's true. Yeah.
Now it's just, we're kind of left with,
Go into your comedies. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no, that's okay. And then, then we go into comedies. Bojack Horseman, fantastic comedy that you've talked about a lot, is about a narcissistic, self-involved, schmuck. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is about a quartet of narcissistic, self-involved schmucks who own a bar. Vice Principals is about two narcissistic, self-involved vice principals. You're the Worst, which is, it's in the title. What we're talking about is the title of the show.
Right.
This is a quote-unquote romantic comedy about two narcissistic, self-involved Los Angelinos, and that's, I guess, triple redundant. Falling in love. And, a lot of these are good. And then, you take those out. Then you have The Walking Dead. Are there any heroes left alive in that show now?
I would say that most of them have made difficult choices.
That's right. And then you think the same year that The Sopranos premiered, The West Wing premiered. The West Wing it's a very skilled, very fantastic drama, but I got to tell you, it seems like a show from the 60s.
Right.
It seems like not one generation.
Everyone has good intentions.
They do, and that's the thing that was so fantastic about it is, it was about a Democratic White House, but Aaron Sorkin had the presence of mind, and had the respect, and had the dramatic chops to make everyone kind of, you could empathize or sympathize with them, and everybody was trying to do the right thing from their point of view. And there'd be a lot of times when you'd have the White House are getting prepared to tear into the Republicans, and then they go to the meeting, and then the Republicans tear into them with 5 things they hadn't even thought of, and they our heroes leave the meeting wondering if they know what the hell's going on and How'd they get it so wrong? So it was always, I mean, you think about that show is, where the writers, what's Aaron Sorkin doing now? That's what we need. Anyway,
Yeah.
So going through this list, it's just when dramas made this leap with Tony Soprano, they made this leap to this second, this more advanced level of storytelling, for lack of a better term. The way stories are told on television now is so advanced and so great. There's a reason this is the platinum age of television. Comedies have kind of made that leap. They've gone to single camera comedies, and there are a million different creative kinds of comedies. And there's you have It's Always Sunny or It's the Worst, but then you also have The Good Place. You have Parks and Rec. You have Community. There are all these modern comedies that show the entire range of human experience. And now it's like the range of human experience expressed in dramas is just so tight and puckered and bitter, and half of these shows star murderers.
Right. Yeah.
So, what do you think? I mean, am I going too far here, or are you noticing this
is. I think a lot of people are going through this, like, because somebody asked me, like, did you watch The Young Pope? And I'm like, no.
Yes.
Because I'm like, I just can't bring myself to sit through another bummer.
Yes.
This is the reason I stopped watching The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I still watch Game of Thrones. We've talked about this a lot because I feel like there's more to Game of Thrones, but there's some shows that are just dark because they're dark. And
Right.
their characters are unlikable, and they think unlikable equals edgy.
Exactly. Oh my God, yes.
And that's not what's happening on Game of Thrones, so I still enjoy that show.
Yeah.
But like something like Vinyl, like that to me looked like, hey, people like anti-heroes. Let's, it looked like they were trying to make it edgy. Like, see how edgy it is, you guys?
Yeah.
I just couldn't watch it. I tried watching Sons of Anarchy too, and that one was too dark for me. I was like, I hate all these people. I don't care what happens to them.
That's right.
So I stopped watching.
Keep going.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, like, you've kind of already rattled off, like, your picks for your favorite anti-heroes. And I wanted to say, like, I mentioned JR and I mentioned Vic Mackey, who I think is one of the very best anti-heroes because he's a very crooked cop.
Yeah.
Like, and they just set it up right in the first episode. Like, he murders a fellow police officer in cold blood.
Yeah. It's a great.
They're like, and that's just the way it's going to be. And I found watching that show to be so stressful.
Yeah.
And he's like got all these like criminal illegal plates spinning, and any moment you're waiting for them to like crash down on him and waiting for him to get caught. And at the same time, he's catching like other bad guys. So then sometimes you find yourself kind of pulling for him.
Right.
It's really, really remarkable what they did. And then I wanted to mention how much I love George Costanza. And I would argue that really anybody on Seinfeld could have been on this list.
That's the thing that I love about Seinfeld, and you're 100% right. All of them, with the exception of maybe Kramer, all of them, definitely Jerry, definitely Elaine, definitely George, are all anti-heroes.
They're all terrible human beings. I mean, just like real garbage people.
They are.
They are so selfish, and they represent like our very worst instincts.
Right.
But it's like this little part of us that like we can relate to. Like maybe you think it, but you would never do it. And that's why you kind of like them. And it's just really funny.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastically fun. And what I think is great is I think people were distracted by how funny that show was from what it was really doing. There's the final episode, I think, is a little more derided than it deserves to be. It was a little clunky in the construction, and it just felt off in its rhythm. However, the idea of putting these 4 people on trial for being awful people was brilliant. And that's the thing, is when you start, because I was having this feeling like in the last couple seasons, they'd kind of highlighted a little bit, but when they had the trial and said, these people are, look at all the awful things they've done, and it was just bang, 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 bang. It's like, oh my God, these people are just the creepiest of
Well, come on. It's like it is like really awful when George Costanza's fiance dies from like licking all those envelopes that had like some sort of toxic,
right?
Some sort of toxin in it, that she dies, and he's like, what are you gonna do? Like, shoulder, like, what a sweet relief for him that he doesn't have to get married now.
It's true.
So awful. I remember always watching that show and thinking it was so funny, and that part I was like, oh my God, they really are just terrible people.
That's right.
Like,
and that's
there's no special moment where they redeem themselves.
Right. That show had the famous catchphrase, or kind of writing motto: no hugging, no learning. Yeah. Which makes sense. But the thing that's what you're saying about that is that actually that moment highlights it. George is kind of a creep, but the way Elaine and Jerry react to it is the same.
Yeah.
When they're told she's dead,
with a shrug, like, oh,
Yeah, it's kind of chilling. But anyway, I don't know. I'm wondering, because I was trying to think of some shows that weren't like this. Like Lost was a big drama hit that wasn't like this. Friday Night Lights, because it used to be
Friday Night Lights,
which I haven't seen too much of.
Oh my God,
I think I might watch it because
you should. It's so good.
It seems like it's playing on this second level of quality, but it's not relentlessly awful and grim and just, because there was a time in television where everything had to be like the Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beaver. Up, peppy, optimistic, everybody's problems are resolved at the end of an hour. Even shows like L.A. Law, which were, supposedly adult dramas, everything got wrapped up. Everything was simple. Everything was clearly explained. Everything, I'm wondering, when are we going to get grown-up, not anti-hero focused, not overly grim dramas? Why does, it's almost like the television drama has gone from painting with one set of tiny brushes, or one tiny set of brushes, to an alternate set of tiny brushes.
They should. It's interesting that one of the big hits to come out of this new TV season is This Is Us. And everyone's like, what a surprise that this, what a surprise that this show's such a hit. And I was like, is this really a surprise? It is like one of the only shows on TV where everyone's not an awful person.
You know what? I need to give that a shot.
Because it's that kind of show where you can watch it and not feel terrible about it.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me that is a hit, and I'll be curious to see like where our discussion goes about Riverdale, because I feel like a lot of Riverdale falls into some of these traps that we're talking about.
It does, and I think
But we need to save it for topic 2.
We are going to save it for topic 2, but also in the weeks ahead, I'm not sure exactly when, we need to have a discussion about what the F is wrong with network television. There is something going on, and maybe I've just watched too many television shows and seen and heard too many behind-the-scenes stuff, that network television seems to be actively hostile to quality in a lot of different ways. And it's funny because...
So then when something good gets on, you're like, what a surprise!
Kind of, yeah, exactly.
How'd that happen?
Like, that's why I have not watched This Is Us, because it's like, it's network television. I know what it's going to be like. I tried this a couple years ago with Parenthood, and it was just kind of not paint by the numbers, but you could see the network just forcing stuff in, which is interesting because I think my opinion of Riverdale might surprise you.
Okay.
But
I'm ready.
I think this network thing has kind of affected that, so let's get on to topic 2. Unless there's something else you want to say.
Nope.
All right, let's get on to topic 2.
Want more dorking out? Well, there's a few simple things you can do. First, go to iTunes and give us your 5-star rating and review. This helps us find new listeners. Next, be a good friend and share like your mommy told you to. Simply go to dorkingoutshow.com and you'll find some links to our show which you can post to your Facebook, Twitter, or wherever fine social media links are shared. It's an easy way to impress your friends and make your enemies green with envy. Which is really the point of social media anyway, isn't it? After all, listening to any of the Dorking Out shows means that you're a modern trendsetter. We know, because if audience research has shown anything, it's that the Dorking Out show audience is smarter, more attractive, and less susceptible to baseless flattery than any other audience in the podcasting world. That means that you're the best. It's right here, in the data, which is totally real and not made up in any way. So share our show. You can talk about it with your friends, and we can get new listeners, which means you get more shows. It's the circle of life modified to include podcasting. Point is, please rate us on iTunes and tell your friends. Now, back to the show.
Topic 2. Last week, we saw the premiere of the CW's Riverdale, a teen soap opera / murder mystery based on the iconic Archie characters, Archie, Veronica, Betty, Jughead, and all the rest. It's basically Dawson's Creek, One Tree Hill, Pretty Little Liars, Gossip Girl meets Twin Peaks. NBC is airing its reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, Emerald City, which takes one of the most colorful movies of all time and turns it into a dark, serious bummer, if you ask me. Joining us to talk about Riverdale, Emerald City, and the task of reimagining an old property for a modern age is Abbie Bernstein, a journalist for Assignment X and author of The Art of Mad Max Fury Road and The Art of the Great Wall, which is coming out in February. Thank you for joining us, Abbie.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure, definitely.
Yes. Should we just get started and talk about kind of our initial impressions of Riverdale before we get into the overall thing? And we should let Abbie go first. Guests first.
That's right.
Oh, well, thank you. I did not have a heavy investment in the Archie comics, although I was very happy when they did Archie versus Sharknado, because, we love reasons. Sharknado at Assignment X.
As were we all.
But I think Archie versus Sharknado may have about as much to do with the original Archie ethos as Riverdale does. My criteria for an update or an adaptation are, one, does it work on its own? If you've never heard of the original thing, is it interesting to watch in any event? The other is, if you do have fond memories of the original, does it have enough connection to the original to go, well, you have to call it that because otherwise people are going to think it's a ripoff? Like Westworld, you've got an amusement park that people are paying to go to that is populated by realistic androids. You kind of can't not call it Westworld, right, whatever you do with it. But in the case of Riverdale, I think, if they called it Lakedale and called Archie Alfie and Veronica Vera and Betty Barbara, I'm not sure people would leap to the conclusion that this was even meant to be Archie.
Yeah, when I watched this, I thought, well, this is just Dawson's Creek. Like, it's almost like literally Dawson's Creek. Like, it's got, kind of a boring, clueless guy at the center who's best friends with a girl who's really cute, the girl next door who, wants more. And then, like, an exciting new girl moves in and, like, catches his eye. And, I mean, it even has a student sleeping with a teacher. That's right out of the first episode of Dawson's Creek. I didn't think it needed to be called Archie.
Yeah, it's like they could have made this show and they didn't really need the licensing issue. Now, from TCA, I gather that the Archie comics people are very involved in the show, which I suppose is nice. And now, granted, I haven't, like I said, I haven't read the Archie comics in a million years, so maybe this is a reflection of what they're like in 2017. A possibility I don't discount. Do either of you have any more insight into that?
I feel like Archie was before my time.
I don't. Yeah, I read some comic books when I was growing up, but I never got into the Archie thing. So, yeah, I have to say I was kind of shocked at how much I did not hate this.
You're not really the audience for this either.
No, that's the thing. It's part of me was no, because this is a long running discussion that we've had on the show, which is reimagining things, taking a property, doing something new with it. And for my money, Abbie, and I'd be curious to hear what you think, it seems to answer yes to the first question. Can this stand on its own? But no to the second question, which is, is this going to be kind of a ripoff, or are people that liked the original thing this is based on, are they going to like this? I almost feel as though it renewed maybe 20% too much, so it's become a completely other thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can like the Archie comics and you can like this, but I don't think you will like this because you like the Archie comics.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I don't think there's a causal relationship there.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that they even did this, actually, like that they would use Archie as like the hook to make this teen drama stand out, because it's not like the kids these days are like, oh, I hope they do something with Archie.
Exactly.
It's like, kids, do they even I think the target audience for this, do they even know who Archie is?
Well, I think, it's being brought to you by the people who bring you the Berlanti DC-verse. And, at this point, the CW and that production company have such a relationship that's built around adapting comics that they may have felt, well, we know how to do this. We're very comfortable doing this. Let's do this rather than blue sky something. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I wasn't.
Well, I really look forward to the Full Metal Jacket version of Beetle Bailey.
Oh my God, that would be great.
That would be. There we go.
Oh my God! So
maybe
stop
some
the podcast.
sort of like,
we got to get writing.
Some sort of like update with Peanuts, but it's like that movie Kids.
Oh God! Stop! Ow! All right.
Or the Quest for Fire version of BC.
Maybe like a Louis-inspired take on Drabble.
Oh man! Oh man! Oh man! So, well, actually,
By the way,
Ricochet, the Wild Bunch.
I really do want to see a Full Metal Jacket version of Beetle Bailey.
I do too. I really do
go.
too. All right, actually, Abbie, one thing I want to ask you before we get diverted to an alternate universe where all these awesome shows come out. You've seen a couple episodes of Riverdale.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I was kind of shocked by is, at first, it was like, okay, they're taking Archie and they're bringing it into the modern age, and they're kind of having full lesbianism in it. They're having all this kind of quote-unquote modern stuff, and it's dark and edgy and whatever, and there's a crime at the center of it, and okay. And then watching it, it's like, not only are they doing all that, but they're also really ripping off Twin Peaks, in a way. Down to certain shots, the shot of the city town limits sign with a bunch of evergreens behind it. It's like they're consciously... I'm almost wondering if they're taking just as much from Twin Peaks as they are from the Archie comics. Does that sustain, or what? How?
The murder gets considerably more baroque in the second episode. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of like, goodness me, what has happened here? Because it's not. I mean, it's a lot weirder than it seems to be in the first episode, and I'm sure that it will get even weirder from there. So it's a little more accessible than David Lynch, but it did seem to be sort of very, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, and then
it's David Lynch light.
Yeah, kind of like somewhere between David Lynch and Gossip Girl. David Lynch's Gossip Girl.
I have to say that's an interesting combination. And when I sat down to watch this, I thought, okay, this is a teeny bopper show. You can almost see the network executives' influence in that, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take Archie comics and we're going to make it dark and this, we're going to have a gay teen and he's going to be having a secret affair with, one of the iconic characters, and then we're going to have a murder. You can almost see them kind of desperately throwing everything in the kitchen sink into this pilot. But I noticed like 3/4 of the way through, even though it's not for me, if I were in college or if I were in my 20s or something, I would probably love the crap out of hate watching this movie, hate watching the show, or watching it, maybe not so much with hate. I mean, and that's one of the things that struck me that I'd be curious to see what lovers of the show think, is that Archie at its center is kind of the boring, aw shucks, do-gooder kid, and everything around it has kind of been amped up in a way, which I thought was...
Well, he's Kyle MacLachlan and Blue Velvet.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, I thought, and I there was one moment where Betty and Veronica are trying not to be cheerleaders. They're not, they're not going to let Betty on the team. Then Veronica says, hey, let's do this to kind of show our big finish. And she kind of gives her this faux lesbian kiss. And then they kind of call out on the show. That's, you might think that that's cutting edge or new or whatever, but that's so 10 years ago. It's almost as though they're having fun with all of the different tropes that they're throwing into it. And
they're not fully breaking the fourth wall.
Right.
But yeah, they're conscious of what they're doing, and then they've got Josie and the Pussycats singing Sugar Sugar, which somebody at TCA said, are you sure this isn't going to cause a controversy because that's such an iconic Archie song?
Right. Oh my God.
I will say, I really did actually like the relationship between Betty and Veronica. I was kind of surprised. I think it would have been the stereotypical thing to set them up just as romantic rivals for Archie, and that they're actually friends and seem to like each other. And I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
For me, that was the biggest surprise of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what were you going to say, Abby?
I was just saying, yeah. I mean, I think it's a very good one of what it is. The thing is this your thing? This is not. This is not quite my jam.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it's a fine show, but it's not something I'll be watching on a regular basis.
And
Right.
it's not that I can't watch shows about high school students. I love Buffy, like, most of everybody. And
Yes.
I'm really enjoying The Magicians, which really did have a great fourth wall breaking line where they get to the invisible castle, and it's like, well, why can't we see the castle? It's like, well, they built it and then they realized they ran out of money before, and they realized that you could use really cheap construction materials as long as nobody could see it. They blew the budget on everything else they were doing. It was like, I don't think they're really talking about the previous castle builders.
That's right. Cool. Actually,
I haven't heard anything. I didn't hear any dialogue like that in Riverdale yet, but the show is young, so
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. I think I could see myself liking this show, and we're going to have this in a segment in the weeks coming up, talking about the problem with network television and just the different tone that it takes to. I don't know. It's almost this is my own hobby horse. I'm on too much, but it's almost like you can see the desperation of these network executives, and they're just strangling their own shows before their potential can be reached. But
well, I'm not so sure that it's that, because it is of, if you I think the CW kind of lets the shows do their own, they're I don't think the CW is going to interfere that much with Greg Berlanti, because he's got a really solid record with them.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of show that he makes. I mean, if you look at Supernatural, they had God on last season. It's sort of like, do you guys get protest? Right? Is the far right too busy with other things to notice what you're doing? Because they literally had, So the CW is not going, you can't do this, you can't do that too much with their, Riverdale itself is an unproven commodity, but Greg Berlanti has half of their programming, so I doubt they're going to dictate to him. But this is kind of the tone that he likes. It's like, if you look at Arrow, which is the most serious of those 4 shows, but Arrow is also the first. It's not as dark as Arrow. It's not as light as some of the others. It's sort of in that spectrum. It just doesn't have anybody with superpowers.
Right. Well, actually, one thing I want to ask before we go on to Emerald City, and I'm very excited to hear what Sonia has to say about this. You mentioned Josie and the Pussycats earlier, and for me, that scene where there's a scene where Archie goes, he realizes over the summer he wants to become an aspiring songwriter. He wants to become a songwriter, so he goes to the kind of the music department. Josie and the Pussycats are there practicing, and they are very mean to him right out of the gate for even looking at them. And what was interesting is, hey, this is a private thing. Get out of here. Why are you staring at our pussycat accoutrements? Ears.
Their ears.
And then in the next line, she says, this is part of branding. That's why we always wear these. And she explains why we want people to look at them. But if you look at them, you're being rude and mean and whatever. And then she just says bye-bye in this really kind of Mean Girls type of way. Is it me? That seemed like a very white guy trying to write a young African-American song, part. It just seems so weird and tone-deaf.
I didn't think that it was so much that it was African-American. I think that happened to be, I thought it was like the justification for that was they realized he was an aspiring musician and they didn't want him ripping them off.
Right.
And they didn't want his crappiness interfering with, or his potential crappiness interfering with their trajectory.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was racial. I thought that was sort of like a paranoid high school thing.
I took it as like a male female thing. Like, we don't need you to rescue us. We have our own thing. We write our own songs and tell our own stories. We don't need your songs and your stories.
And I agree. I kind of agree with both of you. I think that's what they were trying to go for. But for me, it just seemed like really over the top. And I think it was the juxtaposition of those two lines, which is, why are you looking at our ears? You're being rude. Stop looking at it. Oh, by the way, these ears are our brand. That's why we want everyone to look at it. It was just this weird, like, crazy girl. And it didn't seem like it was done as a kind of intentionally constructed. It seemed like it was kind of like clumsy.
It seemed like a continuity error.
Or something, yeah. So, anyway, I was just
Well,
curious.
it seemed like sometimes they'll rewrite a scene and not realize that they didn't rewrite part of it, and then you've got...
That's true.
You've got that.
There's a TV show that I love, but it has one character spends most of the episode in a dungeon, and somebody forgot that he was in the dungeon, so in the middle of the episode, there's a scene of him with everybody else teaching a kid how to shoot a bow and arrow. While he's in the dungeon.
All right,
So that was like an edit, it got past the edit into the air. This is not Riverdale, I hasten to add.
Really? They don't have dungeons on Riverdale?
In case
they
anybody
might.
thinks,
That's right.
in case, so that, sometimes people will just go, oh, well, they'll sort of like forget,
Right.
So that may be that somebody didn't look and go, we need Josie to be mean to Archie. And then somebody went, well, why are they wearing those pussycat ears? And they put that line in that scene instead of somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because actually, I think that is the only scene they're in unless they're actually playing in front of the entire school. But anyway.
In the first
they
episode,
show up
anyway.
in the next episode.
That's true. So, on that note, that has nothing to do with this segue, but I'm being clumsy myself. Emerald City, the NBC's reimagining of The Wizard of Oz.
Okay. I mean, to me, that's another one where if you went cop or young woman and large dog wind up in strange land, if you took away the names and nobody would go, oh, this is The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
So
do you like it?
It's really pretty to look at. It's just one more show about about people schlepping through a dystopia, and it's and it's not a particularly lively one. I mean, I think we're all a little spoiled by George Miller and Mad Max.
Right.
Holy cow, we are. Yeah.
But it's sort of like for as much, for as many characters as you've got, the fact that nobody's really popping, it's not fun enough and it's not scary enough, is my feeling.
Yeah. I have full disclosure. I made it about 20 minutes into the first episode, and I just really hated what I saw. I mean, they took one of the most colorful, beloved movies of all time, and they made it depressing and dark and super boring. I thought it was so boring.
Well, I love the dog.
Yeah, well, I'll watch, dogs, yes. But all the rest, I just couldn't get into it at all. I just actively disliked what I saw and could not make it past that 20-minute mark. I didn't even make it halfway. That's so sad.
I made it through. I watched the first episode, and then I discovered they weren't paneling it at TCA, and went, well, then I can wait to watch it till later. Because it's like cramming for a college exam.
You're watching it for work. I mean, I was watching it so that we could talk about it on the podcast, and at 20 minutes, I was like, that's enough of that.
That's right. I know enough to talk about it for 5 minutes on a podcast. I don't like it.
I really just, I didn't respond to it at all. At all.
Yeah.
I could see what they were doing, but it wasn't working for me.
Yeah, I just felt like, okay, this is a show about a dystopia, and the fact that the protagonist is from our world doesn't seem to matter all that much in the first episode. And there's just, it's neither sparky enough or weird enough or scary enough for me to go, okay, well, this is distinctive from all of these other dystopian things.
And I just didn't think it needed the Wizard of Oz hook at all. If you're going to do something based on the Wizard of Oz, do something based on the Wizard of Oz. It didn't have any kind of connection for me, really.
Well, I mean, again, they're naming things. Well, this is Dorothy, and this is Toto,
and this is why they call the dog Toto. Because we needed a Toto origin story. Why is he called Toto?
Let me guess. She really likes the band Toto.
Oh, I wish.
Or, yeah, the rains down in Africa.
I'm trying to. I think when she first lands in the strange dystopian land, there's some but
that's their word for dog.
That's their word for dog.
So Dorothy,
it's not her dog, it's a police dog.
So wait a minute, let me get this straight. So they,
Yes.
because I'll admit to the audience right now, I didn't do my homework and I didn't watch 1 minute of Emerald City. But so
Lucky.
they get to Oz. They
Yes.
have a word for dog that is Toto,
Yeah.
and all their other words are perfect Queen's
No,
English.
no,
that
she
we can talk about.
encounters a tribe of people who speak. I think it's the Munchkins. Actually, they speak
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Munchkin, and the Munchkin word for dog is Toto. So that's what she starts calling the dog, who was in the police car that she took refuge in during the hurricane,
Okay.
or the Twister.
All right.
Yeah, it wasn't her dog.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
it wasn't her dog. It was a police dog that was in the police car.
right. Okay.
And also the show has Vincent D'Onofrio doing like weird Vincent D'Onofrio things, which I really thought might be enough to get me through, but it wasn't.
Well, I mean, it's, you need some kind of context, and, it was sort of like, if you're going to get somebody of that generation, get maybe Steve Buscemi,
Yeah.
Right.
or, somebody who likes to rock and roll with the weirdness. Because Vincent D'Onofrio, I mean, God bless him, he, when he did Men in Black, he actually like put something in his boot to screw up his leg so that he would walk like an alien.
He's such an amazing kook.
He is.
He's a very dedicated guy.
Yes.
So, but the thing, it's sort of like,
He
I'm
actually
not
went
sure
to
how-
Oz for this.
yeah, I'm not sure how realistic you want to get with somebody who's just very depressed and conflicted and, kind of a Shakespearean character if you want to do him that way, but that, it will be very truthful. It may not be very telegenic.
Right.
Right.
Does this show fall in line with kind of what they're doing with like, what was it, Grimm and Sleepy Hollow, and I think what's the other one? Once Upon a Time, right?
No,
did I get that name
No,
right?
none of those are. I mean, Grimm. Well, Sleepy Hollow. That's a whole other show.
Okay.
But Sleepy Hollow is enough of Sleepy Hollow to go, okay, that, fair enough. Nobody's, you understand why it's called Sleepy Hollow and why the characters are who they are. Grimm has, God bless it, it has the courage of its own insanity. And Once Upon a Time has the courage of its own insanity. And while Once Upon a Time occasionally gets dystopian, when the villains take over and everything goes to hell in a handbasket, the Enchanted Lands are not themselves dystopic. They're Disney fairy tale lands.
Right.
But those are adaptations of characters and stories we know, but you can see that and it connects and it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, Once Upon a Time really goes out of its way to make sure they include everything you might ever have thought of, and then it explains it and figures out how to connect all the dots, which is kind of one of the charms of that show is when it's firing on all thrusters. It's great to see how they manage to weave all of these fairy tales into each other.
Cool.
And Grimm is just, Grimm has kind of like, it has arcs and it also has monsters of the week and it has it has a fun mythology and it has some really fun characters who popped in ways that they probably didn't think were going to.
I think we
Sleepy
gathered.
Hollow,
Go ahead.
these are all
Sorry.
things I actually watch, so
Yeah.
those I can talk about with some degree of coherence.
Well, yeah, I think that's why we are going to have you on the show a lot more because you have a lot to say and we're interested. You have an interesting take, and we're glad we had you on the show. Sonia Mansfield.
Yes.
What would you give Riverdale on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say it's a 5. Like, it's a perfectly fine show. It's just not for me. It's like right in the middle.
What would you have given it if it had come out in your senior year of high school, freshman year of college?
Oh, then it would have been like a 7.
All right. What would you give Emerald City?
Oh, I don't want to crap on someone's show.
All right. That's an answer.
A 1.
Oh, wow. I guess you did.
I didn't like it.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
All right, Abby. Same questions. Riverdale.
Oh, well, you
Scale of 10.
that Anthony calls me Abbie minus because I tend to give everything a B minus. Riverdale is a really good one of what it is. I am not its target audience.
Right.
I was never its target audience. I actually probably like it better now than I would have if I'd seen it at that age, because at that age I was actively affronted at things that I felt unincluded by.
Right.
Whereas now it's sort of like it's okay. I've found my jams in various places. Not everything has to be for me, which is good because a lot of it isn't. So I would actually give it a 7. It's a perfectly good one of what it is.
Cool. Yeah, I think I give it a 6. It's not for me. I think if I were in college or wanted to watch that kind of show with a bunch of friends and screw around, yeah, 7 or 8 way back then. Yeah, maybe an 8. We'll see where it goes. What would you give Emerald City?
Well, it's beautifully produced. I'd give it a 4. I don't think it proves its thesis, as it were, but it's very handsomely made and it's a good effort. It just doesn't gel.
Right. Cool. Well, Abby, where can people find you online if they're looking to talk at you?
Well, on Twitter, I am Hedgebeast. At Hedgebeast on Twitter, and okay. I'm on Facebook. And I write a lot for Assignment X. So
you write a lot for Assignment X.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, we should
mention Riverdale is on Thursday nights on the CW. I believe Emerald City is on Friday nights on NBC.
Get it while you can.
Correct.
And get it while you can. And we should mention that when we talk about the TCA, we're talking about the Television Critic Association.
Critics Association.
That's right. No, it's the Television Critic Association. One critic.
Yeah, it's one person. It's just
it's Abby. All of Hollywood turns out to talk to Abby. All right. Abby, thank you so much for being on Dorking Out. We are looking forward to having you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to our favorite headlines of the week. And I think this week we can actually say they are our favorite headlines, as opposed to last week when we just called them headlines.
That's right.
So last night, the Screen Actors Guild and the Producers Guild gave out their awards. And this is my favorite headline because, as I've mentioned many, many times, we take our Oscar picks very seriously. And the Guild Awards are an excellent indicator of who's going to win.
Especially the SAG Awards.
So I thought maybe I would just run down the winners like really fast. Is that cool?
Right. Sure, yeah. No,
okay.
No, you can't. Don't do it.
No, don't
now
do
what
it,
are you going to
dummy.
do? You asked me and I said no. Now where's your headline, Mansfield?
I just am going to ignore you. So, outstanding performance by an actor in a leading role is Denzel Washington. Outstanding actress, they say outstanding performance by female actor in a lead role. Emma Stone. That was pretty cool.
Okay.
Outstanding performance by male actor in a supporting role was Mahershala Ali from Moonlight.
Which
Very
I finally
cool.
saw.
Oh, did you love it?
I liked it. I don't know if I loved it. It's just a very tiny movie.
It's a very tiny movie.
Which I like, but it's, I don't know. Well, nothing against Moonlight, but Oscar's insistence on focusing on small movies, by and large, when it comes to the big Best Picture category, is really starting to irritate me. But it is really good. It is really affecting. It is really good. Keep going.
I really
Sorry.
liked it. Outstanding performance by a female actor in a supporting role. This is no surprise. Viola Davis for Fences. I would also call that outstanding performance by a female actor in a lead role, but she's submitting herself in a supporting role.
Right.
That's fine.
Right.
Outstanding performance by cast in a motion picture. This is the one that's kind of their equivalent of Best Picture, and it was Hidden Figures, which I really liked. Side note, La La Land was not nominated in this category, probably because it's just Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, really.
Right.
It's not really a cast movie, you know? So
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I wasn't super surprised when Hidden Figures won, because sometimes the movie with the biggest cast wins. Not really a surprise to me.
Right.
And there were a lot of TV things too. Do you want me to run those down?
Sure.
Or should I just go on to
Have at it.
Producers Guild? Okay.
That's all right. We just care about movies. Screw you. Despite what we've said for the last 31 episodes, it's really movies we care about.
Okay. So, male actor in a television movie or miniseries was Bryan Cranston, all the way.
That's right, baby. All the way, Bryan Cranston. Oh, you mean the movie. Got it.
Yes.
Television movie.
Outstanding performance by a female actor, television movie or miniseries, Sarah Paulson for The People versus O.J. Simpson. Not surprising. Outstanding performance by male actor in a drama series. This was kind of surprising. John Lithgow for The Crown.
Yeah, I did see that The Crown actually picked up a couple. It's interesting
she won for drama series. Claire Foy.
Yeah.
I think this one's weird, but this is one of those, like, I'm not sure this should be in the comedy category. Outstanding performance by a male actor in a comedy series, William H. Macy for Shameless. I don't watch Shameless. Is it really a comedy?
It's kind of a comedy. We are going to have to talk about this at some point.
Yeah.
Because I have never seen a moment, and granted it's very limited viewing, of Orange is the New Black that ever made me crack a smile.
See, I think it's the opposite. That show was being no, you're right. Like, I feel like it's not it's not a comedy.
Right. And
Orange is the New Black is not a comedy to me.
Isn't Transparent on
yeah, that's also in the comedy category.
We're gonna have to find this when we talk about it. There's some entertainment writer that wrote a thing that basically said, if it's a half an hour, Hollywood sees it as a comedy, no matter how grim it is.
Right.
No matter how unfunny, it's a half an hour. We're programmed to think half an hour is sitcom length. It must be a comedy. But Orange is the New Black
isn't even it's an hour long, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's 45 minutes or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know. These people.
But anyway, Julia Louis-Dreyfus won for Veep. Ensemble drama series was Stranger Things, which I thought was very cool. And David Harbour, who played the sheriff, gave a really awesome speech. If you want, you should Google it and watch it.
Cool.
Ensemble. Funny you should mention Orange is the New Black. It won the comedy series category.
See what I'm saying? That's what that was my subconscious 2 minutes ago saying, "Hey, dummy, talk about this." Okay. Anyway, sorry.
So now let me go over here to Producers Guild, and why didn't that load? Okay, basically, La La Land won.
Boom, boom, boom.
So let me see. Yeah, La La Land won the Producers Guild, and that one is one of the best predictors of Best Picture.
True, but correct me if I'm wrong.
They're saying like 19 out of 27 years.
Right, but wasn't last year?
Yeah,
wasn't it off last year?
Yes.
Also,
last year, the Oscar went to Spotlight.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my prediction, and then we will talk about this on our full show that we do in a couple of weeks where we do our official predictions. But because La La Land wasn't here and Hidden Figures was there, I don't know. And because they've changed the diversity makeup of all these guilds now, or all these voting bodies now, to make them more diverse in response to the Oscars are white thing, I have a suspicion that Hidden Figures might sneak in there because Hollywood is desperate to show, hey, we're not racist, we're with it, we're down with the black man, that kind of thing.
Honestly, it's that kind of movie that the Oscars love to honor.
That's true.
It's got a really good story. It's historical.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good, like, showy, like, Oscar moments in it.
It does. And what's funny is one of the problems with
By the way, I really like the movie, too. I don't want to make it sound like I'm crapping all over the movie.
I did, too. For me, on balance, I like La La Land better. But Hidden Figures is a very respectable, straight up, not templated exactly, but it's a pretty stereotypical Oscar bait type movie. But the thing is, so, the last couple of years, Oscar, a lot of actors and producers and whatever say, no, we're not racist. No, we believe in diversity or whatever, but they've never had a chance to vote. Because it's all white in all the nominations, they've never had a chance to show it. Now they've got like 3 years of pent up, no, really, we're down with the black man kind of thing. So I'm suspecting they're going to, run like a stampede to Hidden Figures. Even though I think between you and me, I think a lot of their heart is going for La La Land. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. What's your favorite headline?
My favorite headline is everybody's favorite troubled creator, Dan Harmon, talking about look at the production of Community. If you don't believe me, go back and look it up. Talks about Rick and Morty season 3 delays, and he's basically saying it's coming soon. And one of the things that kind of made me happy or that I realized when I was talking about this is I have come to love Rick and Morty very intensely in like the last 3 months.
I've never seen one episode.
Exactly. And that's my point, is because of this new modern era of television, the show that you love like crazy and are just counting the minutes until new episodes come could be a show that you haven't even heard of. Like, you could hear of a new show and it's got 6 seasons, and you sit down and watch the first episode and realize, wow, this is my favorite show of all time. Like, I can only imagine how many people have never seen Breaking Bad and it's just sitting out there waiting for them to watch it.
Right.
For me, so Dan Harmon is talking about season 3. The last new episodes were in 2015. There were supposed to be new episodes in 2016. For those of you who don't know, it's essentially a very twisted version of Back to the Future, where Doc and Marty, or Rick and Morty, go around the universe and have adventures in this ship that can go into alternate dimensions and all this other stuff. And it's basically makes fun of every trope, everything of science fiction, fantasy, Stephen King, it just from top to bottom, every geeky genre thing that's out there, it makes fun of them. So what he has to say is, I don't have a release date for season 3. It's not that I don't know it, and I'm not allowed to say it. It's Adult Swim's domain, which is where Rick and Morty comes on. What I will tell you is it's late because of us. It's late because of me. If Justin, co-creator, were here, he'd agree. He and I would go, yeah, we effed up, and it's hard to put your finger on how we effed up. Rick and Morty keeps getting longer and longer to write, and I don't know why. Which is just him basically saying he is kind of famous for being a stickler, famous for being cantankerous, famous for kind of fighting with the success that he gets. But all that boils down to, we're going to get new episodes of Rick and Morty here, I think, in the first half of 2017. I think it's 18 episodes, 17 or 18 episodes. The first one was 10 or 11 episodes, I think, and the second season was 13, I think. So it's a big order, and I'm very, very excited. And it also
I should finally watch it.
You should, watch a couple of them. It's just I don't know if you have ever watched any of the Channel 101 shows. He started Channel 101, which is a kind of a film festival in Los Angeles where people kind of make episodes of television shows and then vote them up or down to see whether or not they get canceled or renewed by kind of audience interest that go to this film festival and watch it. It's very interesting. The Lonely Island guys, Andy Samberg, got their start there.
Oh, okay.
And they've always been real lovers of television, and viewers of Community will know this. They really love television. They love the tropes of television, and they love to rip it apart and deconstruct it, and it's just very, very, very sharp. So yeah, there's definitely I think for most shows take an episode or 2 or 3 to get going, and I think for me, Rick and Morty was like, by the third one, they had everything dialed in, and it was fantastic. But anyway, so more episodes of Rick and Morty. Dan Harmon's talking about why it's delayed, but it doesn't matter because it's just around the corner. Sonia Mansfield.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you would like to say?
Yes, but instead I'll just say goodbye.
Guess what she's thinking about, people? Goodbye!
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about The Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.
This has been a production of RocketSpots.tv.